Thanks for joining us inside the Dancer's Studio, where we bring listeners like you closer to the creative process. Inside the Dancer's Studio is a program of the National Center for Choreography at the University of Akron, as part of our Ideas in Motion initiative. This episode was recorded in the presence of a virtual audience in the spring of 2021. Today, we join Christy Bolingbroke, our Executive Artistic Director, in conversation with Bebe Miller. Miller's a distinguished professor emerita in the Ohio State University's Department of Dance, a resident of Columbus, Ohio, and founder and artistic director of the internationally acclaimed Bebe Miller Company. Miller's choreography has garnered multiple Bessie Awards, and she has been awarded 2 honorary doctoral degrees as well as a Guggenheim and United States Artist Fellowship for her work.
Bebe, let us begin. When did you know you wanted to be a choreographer?
Well, I started dancing before I could read, really. And so I was fortunate that I started with improvisation and composition along with dance technique, the Nicolai technique in New York City at Henry Street Settlement House. And Murray Lewis was my teacher, so I was right into kind of classic abstract modern dance, which I loved. So making dance, making movement, exploring was always part of what I did. I think, I kind of danced as a kid. I stopped it, quit my piano lessons, trying to be cooler. Got back into dance in college. And I guess I was back in New York when I realized I was working with a choreographer, Nina Wiener, who I had met when I was in grad school. And it was like, I think I'm making movement, and so I'm already doing that, so perhaps I am a choreographer. It was always part of my sense of self, I think. I didn't see myself as a technical dancer only, but just trying to figure out what's the vocabulary that I need to use or develop in order to follow my interest. So, yeah. And then you make a piece, and the first piece was with the other waiters in the restaurant that I worked in, and I love just telling this to, kind of new choreographers, and you work so hard to get to the first one, and then it doesn't occur to you that there's going to be a second one. But things come up during that process, during the finished piece as well, and then you come like, well, maybe I'll keep on going and see who else I can work with. So, yeah.
And I love that you're like, you don't always think about the second one because you're focusing on the task in front of you. But where do you start? Some people might call it inspiration. Some people might call it the blank page if they're a writer. What helps you begin or get things going?
I think that we can say the blank studio floor, for one, just, those initial steps. But that also means that you've been listening in a certain way, listening to movement and to ideas and to the people around you, not so much necessarily with thinking I'm going to make a dance of this, but more of what's going on. What is it about that particular beat versus this other one? Or someone is telling this story and I overheard this as I was walking behind this group of people and it catches your eye. So it's the confluence, I feel, of a lot of things. And maybe what is also involved in that is that you are acclimating yourself to listening on a number of levels, not just for what the dance is going to be, but like, what are you feeling? What's the tension in your body in a particular moment in response to what? Politically, socially, environmentally. And so I feel that choreography is a real exercise in resonance of what are you thinking and feeling, and then you put that with like, okay, I am entering into the studio place and I feel released into activity, or I feel really constrained toward a corner, or some combination of that. So that's how it is for me. I rarely have worked out theme or necessarily even a piece of music that I want to use. It's more of kind of setting the day you start and then seeing what's there. Tricky sometimes, but I find that that's really satisfying.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that you brought up music. One of the questions that our students offered up in advance was, how do you navigate? They talked about it as music permissions, because as they started to come out of their studio and university experience, they realized, like, wait, you can't just use whatever music you want. And you've also, in some of your works, used popular music, top 40, or interviews that were originally featured on television. Can you talk a little bit about, how and when that comes into play?
Sure, that's a good question. And I think that that even before we're thinking about which music you might want to use, you're really also thinking about what rhythmic base am I working in, and which is not necessarily a 4/4 or a 6/8, but almost like the timing of your weight in space, the timing of da da. Oh, I'm hesitating. Oh, yeah, but now I go. So there's a rhythm of action that's not necessarily consistent with music, that you're putting against something that's generally, if it's a pop tune, it's already set. So you're setting yourself in relationship. And so then the question is, like, not necessarily how am I going to find that music and dance to it, but how does it relate to what I've already put in motion? And I feel that then the branching into different kinds of music, a more percussive or more classical, which has a whole range about which classicism we're talking about, or words or text or voices, or the combination of sound and silence, and even that rhythmic thing. One of my favorite moments in our last piece, In a Rhythm, I started with Brick House by the Commodores, which is like a fabulous dance tune. And in working with our stage manager in rehearsal, I just had her turn it on and off, up to her, on and off. And we kept on going. So it was interesting just to hear, like, when you get into the funk of it, you get into your response, and then the music isn't there. So what do? And how do you listen to what it is that you are doing? So that was just a good device choreographically, just to encounter the sound in a different way. Yeah, so there's all kinds of, sound is all around us, and we know that. There's birds chirping, there's traffic. It's an endless thing, lots of choices around.
But I'm reminded of where you started our conversation about listening, too. So rather than saying, like, I'm going to do this piece of music, but you're listening to what does this need, and what happens when that music isn't there anymore. I love that idea. It's a very porous making space. At the same time, there are very real challenges. And another one of our students' questions is, how do you name a dance? Like, you might not be done making it yet, and yet the program title is needed, or the marketing materials are needed. And so it feels, I think, especially for something long form like dance, that needs to unfold over time. And we're going to concisely bring it down to 100 characters. I'm curious, how do you title things?
Oh, wow, that's great. It makes me think of some of my favorite titles over the last span of a career. The single word Rain, I loved, was one of an early solo of mine. One of my first group pieces was A Haven for Restless Angels of Mercy. So something about, like, just the the dynamic, emotional, imagined place that might be. But coming up with them, it's maybe one piece of advice is it doesn't happen all at once. And perhaps you're just listening, you're over the course of making, like, oh yeah, that sense of rhythm, but it doesn't feel like it's in rhythm with anything else. So I'm not sure where I'm going. Or what does rhythm mean? I had a piece called Rhythm Studies, and I called it that because it was when I first came to Ohio State, and I'd set myself time, oh gosh, I have 6 weeks in the studio to make a solo, and the rhythm of my life would not kept keeping me out of the studio. So it took a long time just to figure out what is this rhythm of my life and why can't I control it? So I felt like, well, rhythm studies is how am I figuring out how I'm living through this. So it's what perks your interest, let it sit for a bit. What's in relationship to that, let that sit for a bit. What do you see in movement? What do you feel? And write down stuff, and you can be real abstract and pick every other word, and there you have something. Or the day comes when you have to title it, and there you go. Yeah.
And you just have to move forward with it. Well, similar with the day coming, and because we haven't found a way to stop the world yet. One of the other questions that has come up is, how do you maneuver your way out of a rut? Maybe you've only carved out those 6 weeks. Maybe you have a deadline, whether it's a grant deadline or a opening night, and you have to continue to move forward and get this thing done. But, the magic just isn't happening. Do you have any habits to sort of break out of a creative rut?
They come, and they will continue to come. And maybe that's a comfort, that it's not just happening to you this one time and, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? But perhaps you're on the cusp of looking for another way that you don't recognize. And, it's worked for you in the past. It's like this 1, 2, 3, 4, and you might be realizing that, hey, maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. 1. So if we think that those ruts, even just the visuals of a rut, there are edges to it, and then there's a rise and another perspective on either side. I think best of take your time, breathe, do something so that you can figure out, did that service me? Did I feel like I was, that I was in current conversation with what I just did? Maybe it's a different language. Maybe I need a break. Maybe I need to walk around the block. And I think particularly if you're working with people, if you have collaborators, other dancers, or a composer with you, that conversation of, what did you see? Did you feel that? We sometimes in those working situations with other dancers feel that we have to say, okay, and now you're going to do this. That was great. And now we're going to do this. But sometimes you might just say, I don't know what to do next. Can we try that again? I don't know what to do next. Maybe that's it for today, which is radical. And I think sometimes when you pay for that rehearsal space in particular, it's like, I got to fill it up. But maybe you're filling it up with thinking and musing, or lying on the floor looking at the ceiling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea, too, of just do something, even if it's, hey, that section. Let's see it another way or revisit it again, which is really great.
And actually, that's a really good, let me just think about that repeating it. And then if you're the choreographer and you're not in it, move into another part in the room and watch it. See it from 3/4 angle. Where is it? Is it frontal? Does it need to be frontal? Do you not understand maybe you're mistaken about what is actually front? Maybe it's a 3-dimensional piece. It's those are really good kind of concrete questions to ask of what you're doing. particularly if you're used to working with a mirror as front. Maybe just turn away from it and see what else is there.
I love that idea. I think, too, we have a sort of conditioned training where the choreographer is supposed to be the visionary at the front of the room and just direct everything and make the magic happen. And you're like, oh, what if I move myself and see what new things come up and sort of displace that, too? That's beautiful. I was going to ask, what do you look for in dancers or collaborators?
Oh, interesting. There have been times when I've had open auditions for dancers. It's been a while since I've done that, but and I found that what I would often do if there are 50 people, 100 people, 20 people in a room, I look at what's happening off on the edges. Like, how are they treating each other? Do I feel their personality? Are they trying to just kind of trample over everybody else just to be seen? Because you're really talking about who do you want in the room with you when you don't know what to do, and who you're going to be comfortable with. At a certain point, I love how I see the personality through the dancer, that there is a there, that there is something else that they are imagining and working with or working against or problem solving that is visible. And that's who I want to work with. And I think I've been very fortunate in that I've had a number of collaborators who I've worked with over many years. And it's kind of they have an ability, so I feel like I can see them thinking. And that is a real gift to be in the room with. They're not a blank slate. There's something, it's the rub that's in the room that is generative between us. And I really like that. So
yet more information as far as who's in the room and the presence of that.
Yeah.
The title of our series that you taught as part of this week is 21st Century Dance Practices. And for us, it really was about breaking open the binary that's still prevalent in higher education today, that it's modern or ballet. And we specifically don't try to uplift a single technique, but rather to say these are artists who are working today, who are navigating and finding their own way from their experiences, and especially as an artist whose career spans across the latter half of the 20th century and continues today. What does the term 21st century dance practices mean to you? How might you interpret it?
Mm-hmm. And just knowing that, because I also kind of grew up in the dance boom of the 80s, that my 20th century dance practice is very much a part of my 21st century. So, and when I think back on my own development and how I started with, abstract modern dance, and one of my next practices was West African dance, Ghanaian dance, and right after that was Balkan folk dancing, women's line dances, and then a Cunningham class, and then Nina Wiener, who had worked with the Twyla Tharp Company, so very articulate, sensual, technically really hard, but, kind of how do you figure out how to do this? So I feel like the span of whichever century, how you pay attention over time to what is in front of you is what we're given. And so I think because 21st century, that there is just a plethora of direction to turn to and sources, both online, particularly in this past year, of, what is visible, what is catching your eye, and that you are the only person who can really kind of codify what it is you see and what your interest is. So all the tools that are going to keep you strong, that are going to keep you nimble and active and flexible in mind and body, they can come from your yoga practice, your step dancing, your East African as well as West African, your Irish step, all of this are ways of moving that are interesting. So, and you don't have to do all of them, but it's just like you get to carve the thing that you are interested in. And I think in the 21st century, more and more, just that ability to source the world. I mean, that's what the internet can offer us. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think something that I'm noticing too, I think still to this day, one of the scariest invitations you can make to someone is come to my dance show, because they're like, I don't know what that means, and, but then because the internet is a new platform and social media, things like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, that people can rehearse that jump, that 8 counts over and over again, film themselves over and over again, and then quickly distribute it out. It's changing how we perceive dance, right? Because we're not spending an hour and a half with it in the dark theater, but just in those short bursts. So I would offer that it's changing how people define dance, certainly how they might define virtuosity, because it's those short moments. How do you define virtuosity in dance?
I think that I feel, personally speaking, there is a pull toward what is it that I do and how do I do it, and what makes it, where is it leading me? It's not so much what makes me better at it, but it's like, where is it leading me? And does it call for me to know how I can balance and arrest myself on one foot? I'm like, okay, then I better figure out how I want to do that. Or if on that one foot, does everything else in motion? So that calls for a whole nother alignment. Is it all on the floor? And it's like, what is happening physically, and what's the next step in that? How do I then train my body and my awareness to, oh, whoa, I've been working in my furniture. Whoa. But I notice that the velocity, if I drop back on my sofa behind me, is a feeling that I don't get in the middle of a studio, and I want something about both of those. So how do I notice? And then what do I learn from repeatedly dropping myself on the sofa about velocity? So we have been given a year of a whole nother set of tools. And I'm fascinated with the idea that out of this is going to come something else. But there is also something you said about because of our access to the internet and what's online, there is still the live experience, which is not necessarily the theatrical experience. But even if, say, you're working on something and you want to just put it outside now that the weather is warmer, or you invite some sort of a cipher circle of friends to just contribute at 11 o'clock at night in the middle of a still block, like there's no traffic, and you're like, let's see what we can do. Boom. Even if you film it, there is still a live moment, and I think that I don't want us to give up on that. I don't want us to just rely only on the internet, because ultimately there's a flat front, and I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to you, but there is a particular kind of framing involved. And when you are out in a three-dimensional live moment, there's a different kind of framing that we want to still keep investigating. So what are the tools? We got all of this, and how do we keep it alive?
I mean, just hearing you also reflect and talk about your own approach, it's going to change how I watch your work again now, whether it is live or on video. And I want to acknowledge for our friends in the chat that we've shared a couple of different links. Highly recommend checking out the Making Room, In a Rhythm, lots of amazing content online. If you've reached the end of the internet and you are craving dance performances, I hope you're just as inspired as I am to go back and revisit those. Bebe, I have one more question, and this is for any one of our students, but I think certainly, especially in this last year, artists navigating their way through a pandemic. What advice might you offer for someone who is trying to navigate a creative career?
Best advice that it's a long career. It's not over when you're 32 or when you're 44. Your tools change, your body changes, your interests change, and all of those things are feeding into what you do. So even though this may be hard, you feel like I've missed a year in the studio, but you've gained a year of your life in a very particular way. So how do you reflect back on it? What's rising because of that? Because you've been in your bedroom studio, how well do you know it? So we've missed a lot. We've been around illness. We've lost friends and relatives. Our political and social consciousness has shifted radically, and all in the course of this year. So however many more we get, we have the ability to just kind of farm that into our psyche and to our physicality and continue. All we get is continuing. And so we make the most of it.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Bebe. Thank y'all so much. Have a great weekend and keep continuing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Inside the Dancers Studio Lunchtime Talk Series is supported by NCCAkron, the University of Akron, the University of Akron Foundation, and the Mary Schiller Myers Lecture Series in the Arts. Our podcast program is produced by Jennifer Edwards. Ellis Rovin is our composer and editor. Transcription by Madeline Greenberg. Theme music by Flaco Torres. Cover art by Micah Krause. And Julian Curett and Kat Wentz are our artist coordinators. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we encourage you to subscribe on your favorite podcast streaming platform by searching Inside the Dancers Studio. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to help get the word out, rate us. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening, and stay curious.